Great experiences build great leaders. Great leaders build great teams. This is Building Great Sales Teams.
All right, guys, welcome back to Building Great Sales Teams. I've got a very special one for you guys today, 2 years in the making, actually. Lisa Marie Platske, president of Upside Thinking, owner of Summit Hills Farm, and a #1 best-selling author and international speaker. She's an expert in leadership, connection, human behavior, and personal branding. She's had a ton of milestones from her law enforcement career all the way to being recognized by the White House as a top 100 female executive making a difference. Lisa, welcome to the show, sister.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited for getting to be here with you and your community.
I appreciate it. I'm excited too. I'm most excited to talk about, and this is for personal reasons, to talk about your farm. Okay. So I have a little tiny hobby farm, right? We got chickens. We're going to start growing vegetables in a couple of weeks, so we're excited about it. So I wanted to talk about yours and this journey you've been on over the past about year and a half now, where you purchased a farm and you're expanding the farm. And so what all are you guys growing, or do you have animals, or what are y'all doing on this farm?
I grow leaders. That's what I grow on the farm. So that is it. So I grow leaders. This was not, will I someday have grow vegetables? Yes, I would love to do that. And that was supposed to be this year. However, instead of that, I now have insurance to tend to from a flood and from, a tornado. And so that's not what's happened. And as far as animals, the previous people had horses, but no horses. And most of the neighbors have cattle. I would say, probably a good 80% of them, but no, not looking at that either. So
you're utilizing the space for your Upside Thinking business. And so what are some of the ways you're utilizing the space?
Well, I do private leadership retreat days. And so I have people come to the farm to do their work, do our leadership coaching work, where they come up with, here's what it is that I want, problem that I want solved, or the challenge that I want to be able to work on. And then we spend the day at the farm and we get to use the property for walks and use the land itself to help come up with the solutions. So I've used it that way. I've done group retreats here. I've done corporate retreats here, and I'm actually in the process of creating what I like to call my Upside Warrior program. And that's, something I'm excited about using the land here for as well.
Fantastic. Yeah. And when you have a space like that, there's just so many different ways you can utilize it, especially when you talk about retreats like you are. Yeah. So a lot of what you do is developing leaders. And so we have a philosophy on the show that in order to build great sales teams, you have to be a great leader. So a lot of what we talk about on the show isn't even sales necessarily. It's more about leadership and developing yourself, growing yourself, which is what you're in the business of. So I would love to hear kind of your principles or pillars on how to develop yourself as a leader as well as others.
Well, I love that you get that it starts with self, because I feel like that's where so many people go wrong, is they look at it as leadership is something that you do. And it's like, no, leadership is something that you are. And when you understand that you have a personal responsibility to evolve as a human and to look at everything it is, all the experiences that you've got in life and how they've affected you and how they show up in your interactions with others, then you win. Then you get to make your team and those around you better, personally and professionally. So my leadership journey is one that started off when I was in federal law enforcement. And when I opened my business, I didn't have the business acumen. I had no business experience. I knew nobody who had a business. I wasn't this little girl that grew up and said, I want to be a business owner. In fact, probably if I would have known all of the things that came with owning a business, I wouldn't have taken this route at all, because as you understand, it's really the greatest personal development journey you can be on in owning a business. So definitely more challenges along the way than I ever could have expected. And in doing that, because I had all of those things and was 3,000 miles away from my closest friend or family member, I began interviewing people in business, people who were nonprofit leaders, successful in corporate, entrepreneurs, and interviewing them and going, all right, what is it that you did to be successful? What is it that you did to lead yourself to get to where you are? And that's how the 7 pillars of leadership came up for me. In my leadership philosophy was, I was really looking for a shortcut. And I was also understanding that, much to what you just said, the secret to their success wasn't their sales, even though you need to have sales in order to have a business, and in order for you to have profit. It was their ability to lead themselves, in order to lead them first to get to their team. And so that's really how all of that came about for me. I was looking for, like, what's the magic formula for leadership in business, and the 7 pillars were birthed.
Awesome. Can you walk us through those?
I would love to. So pillar number 1 is start with a written plan, begin with the end in mind. And there's 5 elements to having a written plan. And so this isn't about a 50-page business plan. It's really about having a plan that you identify what is most important to you, who you are, what you want, why it matters. Pillar number 2 is understand your personality. And that is understanding the things in your personality that get in the way and hinder you getting your plan, and understanding the things in your personality that actually assist and allow you to get to where you want to go, and being able to differentiate the two, and understanding that when you choose to take action on something, you do it from the place of, this is my greatest strength, and the rest gets hired out. We all have pieces in our personality that do both. And then pillar 3 is building powerful partnerships. So that is having relationships with purpose-driven peers, not formal partnerships, but rather partnerships that are informal, that allow you to benefit from the power of leverage, making your load lighter. Who understands something? Who is it that actually has the expertise in this particular challenge that I'm confronting, versus trying to figure it out and doing the research on your own. And then pillar 4 is live your priority. And that's the pillar that involves 7 areas of well-being. And this is putting yourself first, your relationship second, and your work third. People find that really hard to do. But for me, because God is so important to me in running my business and helps me run what goes on, for me, when I put me first, I'm actually created in the image and likeness of, so therefore, God goes first with me. So I don't consider it a separate entity. And in order for me to, when I do that and my light shines so brightly and I'm really connected to what matters most, my relationships come second, because I need to be filled up first in order to be any good for them or the people that I'm called to serve. Absolutely. And those 7 areas of well-being in there are ones that oftentimes people want to flip-flop in their physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, financial, relational, and in work creativity. And so pillar 5 is creating a meaningful and memorable presence. And that there's 3 elements of presence, and they are being physically present in the moment, the art of gratitude, and mastering the subtle art of positioning, which is understanding what to say, who to say it to, and when to say it. And there's 7 components of being a trusted expert in that. And then pillar 6 is evaluate your progress. And that's all about profit and understanding. There's 5 questions to ask in that regularly. And that's where metrics land and celebration lands there, and having a sounding board. And pillar 7 is investing in personal and professional development. Many people invest in professional. They do their industry conferences, their industry, things that are in their wheelhouse within their industry, and they don't necessarily pour into themselves as an individual. So that's one of the things that you understand about leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what I like about this is, obviously we're surrounded by coaches, thought leaders, influencers. What I appreciate about what you have here is there's an actual structure behind it. And I would imagine that all of your clients, you put them through this structure and make sure that they're well balanced throughout these 7 pillars of leadership.
I like you mentioning the structure. I share with people that formulas are different than processes. And formulas, being formulaic, is that you follow something the exact same way every single time, like baking a cake or building a house, and you get the same outcome. This is a system. This system is one where any behavioral style can come in, and it's like, this is what it is that where's the weakest link? What is it that's important for you to do? So yes, I walk clients through this, and there is a different focus depending on the individual, because what one person may struggle with, it's not linear. The 7 pillars aren't, you don't do plan and then you jump to 2 and then no, not at all. You're in the journey, and different times of the journey. I understand for myself, sometimes I struggle with number 4. Sometimes with what's going on in my life, I struggle with number 6. It's really about where are you, and then being able to recognize where's the weakest link for me right now. What's getting in the way and impeding my leadership.
No, that's great that you're able to do that as well. And do you find once you start doing that deeper work like that clients kind of start pushing away a little bit? Does that happen?
Of course, of course, in the humanness of it all, which is, what that means, you've got to look at stuff that maybe you really don't want to look at, or you've avoided looking at. I know for myself, it's the same way. And I was just sharing with somebody recently that, physical well-being, which falls under that pillar number 4, that, I've been dialed in and, weighing and measuring my food and getting on the scale and then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, but a couple of weeks ago, I just found myself going like, wow, instead of drinking a gallon of water every day, I'm drinking maybe like 3/4 of a gallon. Sometimes it's a little bit less than that. Oh, that's interesting. I've really gotten off here. And so how does that affect me showing up then with clients? Or how does that affect me, in how I feel? And it's these little things. And so the framework of the 7 pillars in having people push back is that if something's going on, to look at it requires looking at self and going, what are you doing? Wake up. And no, I know for myself, I'd like to hide. So,
it'd be a lot easier to do that, wouldn't it?
right. Exactly. So yeah, definitely. Pushback's a big thing.
So where did this, I guess, passion for leadership and developing leadership come from? Was this something, I would imagine you developed it in law enforcement, and then, obviously you had a calling. Was that just strictly divine, or did you recognize that you wanted to do this for people around you?
Well, the call to leadership came, years ago. I don't know that it came, it didn't. I remember when I was about 9 years old, I was watching a Merv Griffin on television with my grandfather. My sister and I were playing Connect Four, and there was somebody that Merv was interviewing, not like I was paying attention to it or anything. I was interested in my game with my sister. And my grandfather said, "That's going to be you someday, Lisa. You're going to speak to thousands of people." And what it turned out to be is the person was a motivational speaker. And I don't know that it was they were a coach, but that,
Right.
motivational speaker and something like that. And he said, "And your sister will be helping you out." And I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. But what I recognized when my grandfather said that, and I look back at it, is that there was this way in which the, leadership came to me. And I don't know that leadership really is something that you once again do. It's something that you are, right? So you have to you learn more about you. And there was an inquisitive nature to who I am, and my desire to make people feel included, that they would follow me. And so my sister would joke around today, that kids in the neighborhood would I'd come over and hold play church and play teach as the teacher, or whatever, and so there was that. And when I was in law enforcement, when I got hired, Doug, this is so funny. I was hired with 3 other guys, and I look back on this, and it just makes me laugh, because there was with the level that we would be, and it would have been like 1, 2, 3, 4. The person would have had to have like 4 or 5 promotions, depending on who, the 4 of us in the room. And so he was many levels above.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought us in as the I don't even remember what the title was at the time, but sort of like a deputy. And he said, wanted to answer questions, and we were getting ready to go off to the academy. And each of the guys asked questions. They asked questions about pay. They asked questions about retirement. They asked questions about time off, and asked questions about the academy. And I was quiet, because the one thing that I really understood growing up, and that I had learned from my grandparents and my parents, is the being quiet first and just watching and assessing things. Yeah. And so I was just paying attention to their questions, paying attention to him. And he turned to me and said, "You've been quiet. Like, don't you have a question?" And I said, "I do." I said, "And my question is, how long did it take you to get to where you're at?" Because my thought was, I haven't even gone to the academy, but I know where I'm going. And I know it's not going to be like here. I know we're going somewhere else. Right. So like, how long? And he said 17 years. And my first thought was, there ain't no way. It's gonna be 17 years. I was like, thank gosh that didn't come out of my mouth, because that's exactly where my brain went. Like, there is no way. And I remember, just the idea of leadership was about promotion or getting promoted. But the reality was, when I first got promoted, I wasn't the leader. I was not the leader of my team. There was a guy that was there much longer, and he was the leader. And until I learned how to command myself in a way that had people want to follow me, I was just the person with the title. I wasn't the leader. And that's what so many people don't get in their own organizations. And, when they come into companies, is you can call yourself president, CEO, you can give yourself whatever fancy title, founder, this or that. That does not necessarily mean you will ever be the leader of your organization. If people don't follow you and they're not going where you're going, you're not the leader.
I love that story, because it kind of points out that, when you have those motivated individuals or ambitious individuals like you were at that time, a lot of the boat that we miss is giving them the path to the opportunity that they want, right? Giving them the opportunity, structure, whatever it may be. And, and obviously organizations are massive, and the bigger they are, the harder it is to move up the ladder, right? But that's one of the things we preach a lot here, is having that opportunity structure written out, so that they can see it and they can kind of put themselves in the position that they think that they want to go after, and then they have a roadmap to do that, right? I think that's incredibly massive. But something else you said, was you can give yourself whatever title you want. And I think that's so true. I mean, as a young business owner, I always shied away from the owner title and even the CEO, because it's like, all right, I mean, a CEO is actually that's that's an actual like board position. It's, of a formal company,
Yep.
And so I always played around with titles like operator, you know what I mean? Because that's what I was at the time. And I eventually switched to CEO a long time, but we had a board, you know what I mean? And it was
Yep.
official at that point, and then president after that, because I wanted somebody to replace me as CEO. And I was finally understanding the hierarchy and everything. But long story short, um, man, it probably took me a decade to become a true leader in my own business. You know what I'm saying? And so I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. It's like the title isn't enough. You being the owner isn't enough. Like you growing yourself and becoming that leader is everything. And I really got it laid out in front of me whenever I joined Apex, which is a group we're both in. And then I was like, okay, this is what I've been missing the last decade, And so that was a massive moment. But talking about your history with law enforcement, what branch was that? I think I remember, and I think I saw some of your posts too about it. But also, are you incorporating anything you learned in law enforcement in your business now?
Oh, absolutely. So I started off in the United States Customs Service, which at the time was part of the Department of Treasury. And there were, responsibilities were drug interdiction and money laundering investigations, or actually looking for it, commercial fraud. I can spot a fake Gucci bag from a mile away. So
Nice. Not always a
so
good thing.
right. So it's like it was useful, right? It was useful
Yeah.
for in a variety of ways. But when you ask about, what do I use, what law enforcement gave me was an insight into human behavior, how
Oh, I love
humans
that.
behave, both sides of it, meaning the guys that I worked with, and women that I worked with, not just guys, but the
Mhm.
men and women that I worked with that wore the uniform, that put on the uniform, and and went out to work every day. That side of how they worked. The other part is I worked. I was in the agency after 9/11, and so after 9/11, we became a different agency. We became part of the Department of Homeland Security, and U.S. Customs, Immigration, Agriculture, and Border Patrol were put together in one house,
Mhm.
and Customs and Immigration were cut in half, and half of them went to ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and half of Customs went to ICE. And so there was also that, where you had people that you were working with in partnership, and now they were working for a different agency the next day.
Yeah.
And you had culture issues that came up. And so when you look at what I got in terms of human behavior, it was also even in the midst of change. I learned
Mhm.
change management. You also have a particular mission. 9/11 happens, and that mission doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Personally, I had received a promotion. I'd gotten papers that said that I was the new uh, area director for Denver, Colorado, and Wyoming. So I'm going through, I'm promoting supervisors, and I just haven't gotten out there yet to like fly in and take my seat, so I'm doing this from New York.
Mhm.
I get a letter in the mail that says, sorry, you're not promoted anymore.
Oh,
We're
wow.
going to hire somebody on the immigration side because the agency is now splitting, and so we want to bring somebody else in. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like how like I'm like in the role doing the job. Like how are you like now not promoted? And so resilience, there's another thing where I can give you so many experiences of that, that I use today. And in the work that I do, one of the things that I share from a very tactical standpoint is in use of force that I taught at the academy. You have 5 stages, and the 5 stages start with officer presence, how you looked in a uniform. They went to verbal commands, soft arrest techniques, hard arrest techniques, and deadly force. And I use an example where it's the same in business. People first judge you by your presence, how it is you present yourself. Then from there, they judge you by the words that come out of your mouth. Then they judge you by how it is that you handle them and situations before you actually get to deadly force, which is the knockout in business. Now, some people might say, oh, good grief, in law enforcement, and there's so much controversy around that. But it's really, there's been so many ways in which I've taken what I gleaned from that journey and apply it to the work today. And the final piece that I would be foolish for me to not mention is what law enforcement gave me was the art of forgiveness. Because after 9/11, I could have been a really angry person. I mean, Doug, I was really just not happy with humanity. And I couldn't make sense of it. I lost my mentor. I not only lost my mentor, but everything about how I was working was literally the promotion, my relationship, everything was stripped away from me. And I woke up one day so angry. I had sent one of my employees, I'd just gotten word that he passed out. I had sent him to like 100 funerals to be in like dress blues and to represent. I had sent employees to look for human remains at the dig site. And my level of anger was so great that it was like, Lisa, you either figure out how, I get angel bumps. You either figure out how to forgive and move on and let go and let God, or you are going to be one angry, miserable human being who nobody wants to spend time with or be around. And that was just, it was such a pivotal moment for me. So much that I've taken, because it's the same thing in business, which just lets me kind of go, yeah, that's not that important. We're not going to do that. So leadership.
Absolutely. That's a hell of a journey too. You know what? I've got someone very close to me that has had, some unfortunate things happen in her life, and I've seen her take the opposite route. That's tough, because it's hard to get through that shell now of anger, and it's just in every conversation and every sentence, and you can just feel it. The energy's off. And yeah, that can go south fast. And it's crazy because you see it in business all the time when you suggest something to someone or you're having a conversation and you give, you throw out an idea that worked for you and they immediately shut it down and it would never work for them. Or they did that one time and got burned. You know what I mean? Right away, you're like, okay, I'm not going to suggest anything else. You're just, you got the wall up. Right.
Yep.
And so that's a tough thing to deal with on that end. But I can imagine, all the amazing things because we do in small business and within our operations and stuff like that, or private military, you get a lot of these just high level operators, and they've been trained how to complete a mission, which is all we do in business. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah.
So I couldn't think of anybody more qualified to teach leadership than yourself. So
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
What are some mistakes right now, and besides what we've talked about already, that you see maybe some small business leaders making that are pretty apparent, pretty common, and maybe we can just correct that for some listeners right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. What's the big glaring mistake? And what I see that most small business owners do is they focus so much on the problem. And, even recently I had someone say to me, well, you know what, I really want to get better at being able to connect with others. And I said, great, then tell me all the things that you do really well to connect with others. And they were like, what do you mean? And they wanted to go down the path of, let me tell you all the things that I don't do well.
Right.
And it's like, let's look at all the things that you do well, and let's focus there on what it is. Because throughout the course of the day, as a small business owner, you and I both understand that stuff goes sideways often. Like, there's not a day that you wake up and generally, like, all the things on your calendar magically happen exactly the way as you had, and you go to bed and it doesn't happen. I mean, last night I'm fielding calls and it's 8:45 and I'm just so done. And at the same time, it's something that needs tending to. And it's not because I don't have systems and processes or the right people in place or anything
Right.
like that. It's because this person is truly in breakdown and I am the solution. And I could put it off to the next day. And the reality is my commitment is so great to being able to be there. And in between flights, it's what they needed. And so there I am, on the call at 8:45. So with small business, there's so much of a like, what's broken, let's fix it. What's broken, let's fix it. That I find that for some people, there's such a swirl of being in the breakdown that creates more angst than actually spending time in the examination of what really, really is working. Now, when you ask about like what's going on in terms of, problems for small business owners, I look at it as the thing that I hear, so often comes down to clarity. And that clarity is not clarity of where they're going in their business plan or like the amount of the growth trajectory. It's really the clarity and who it is that they are. And so for me, when I see the ethical dilemma, so to speak, that's the best way that I can put it, is like, should I do this or should I not do that? Oh, when you're really clear about who you are and you've given yourself the space, you don't have those decisions they happen quicker. Like you don't
Right.
have to spend as much time wondering which way to go because you're so clear who it is that you are. And people say, make decisions fast. The best people make decisions fast. I think that does a disservice. Some decisions, yes, you make fast, and some decisions need discernment. They need quiet time. They need you to actually be in the who am I and what are the consequences of this decision?
It makes a ton of sense. And I know exactly what you mean because it wasn't until probably about 2.5 years ago that I dialed in my core values, right? And once you do that and you do it based on who you are, not who you want to be, right? And that's not to say that you won't eventually become that person, but you want to do it on who you are. Because if you're setting those core values, whether it's in your business or with your family, you want to make sure that you're representing them at all times, right? And so I did it on who I was. But if core values had a ranking 1 through 10, when it came to integrity, I was probably like an 8.5. You know what I'm saying? And not until I pushed the limit of that to 10 did like crazy things start happening in my business, and not in a good way. They filtered out people that shouldn't have been in my business in the first place, and I allowed to happen because my core value was at a 5 when I allowed it to happen. And so I completely agree with what you're saying. It's like you get to a certain point where it's not even a question anymore. It's like, hey, that's a violation of my core values, so I'm not going to do it, and moving on from there. So speaking to that, um, so one of the recent articles you wrote for the Forbes Council was about basically turning down clients in a tactful, professional way, you know. And so it happens all the times. You know, I'll get a prospect, and then I'll go through their business and everything, and have the conversations with them and all that, and they'll say something that I know right away. Well, that sounds like someone that does things that I don't do. It's the best way I can put it. Like
Sure.
our core values don't align, you know. And so and this is more of again another selfish question. How do you tactfully turn down those clients?
Well, you speak about something that is um, multi-layered. So there are core values in an organization,
Right.
and there are core values in an individual. And so sometimes people go, okay, here are the core values for the business, but oh, no, those core values aren't exactly for me. Those core values are, those are for the business, that's for how we operate. This is what we want to tell people. Kind of like when I say to people, oh, so you value your family, but every time you make a decision, it's not for your family. So it's just something nice you tell your friends, right?
Right.
I mean, it's like you have to actually live and embody what that is. And so the business, when you're an owner, becomes you and you become the business. It's very difficult to separate the two and to be able to say that's just the business's responsibility. But that oftentimes happens where the core values of the individual are different. And so, when going back to what you ask about is how do you tactfully say no, or how do you, for me, it's not about like the tactful, it's not about the tactful answer. It's that I'm really clear that I'm designed to work with people, the people that I'm called to work with. Like that's, that there are individuals every single, at least every single month, if not, weekly, that say, I would like to work with you, and it's not a fit. And it's not a fit for a variety of reasons. And sometimes it's core values and sometimes it's something else. And I'm really upfront and I say, I'm getting that it's not now, or I'm getting that I'm not your guide. I'm not your coach. I'm not your mentor. I'm not your person to help you along the journey. The things that I'm committed to and the things that you seem to be committed to are different. And when the person says, no, because sometimes I'll get, and they'll say, oh, I'll pay you. And I can pay you whatever. And it's like, it's not about that. It's about, I have a mission in the planet. You have a mission on the planet. And where I'm going, I'm really clear where it is. And where you're going, you've got something. And we're just not supposed to be on this path together. And so I wish that I had some magic phrase, to be able to say, like, here's the thing. But it's just, we're not going to the same place. And I sometimes think about that, like in my relationship with my marriage. It's like, we both travel very, very separate paths, my husband and I. He does his own thing, I do my own thing. And at the same time, where we're both traveling to, like what most matters most, that's where it's the same. Our destination is the same.
Right.
And so when someone's, tells me things and I understand there's a disconnect in what they value, like, no, I value mercy. I value justice. I value protection. I value excellence. I value things that are part of it. And it doesn't mean that those things aren't important to you. It's that they're not the same on the journey. So that's my response.
100%. And so, you've got a lot going on right now. I see you all over the social medias and everything, right? What's next for Upside Thinking?
Oh, what's next? What's next? I love that question, because what I think is next and what is actually next, is really often the big curious dilemma, not dilemma, the big curious surprise, I suppose. I'll take a step back on this. Last year, I had started to write a book with a colleague of mine, and we were writing the book, and I was like, I'm going to put this book out on the divine operating system and how to bring God into your business. And then something happened, and the project, we were like, I don't know, so far in it, and the project came to a screeching halt. Person that we hired to help us out with it, like, didn't deliver, and it was like a no. And then I could really, and I was like, all right, so the book's not coming out. Okay, we're not doing that. And then I went forward with something, and I was like, oh, this is what it is that I'm doing. And then I had a flood in my house, and I was like, oh, that's not what I'm doing. And so I told you that I'm excited about the Upside Warrior program, and I am, and about how I can use the land here at the farm, how I can use my land in Wisconsin, how I can use this to be able to bring leaders together, to test them physically, but not like just a challenge course, test them physically, test them emotionally, and
Mm-hmm.
test them spiritually. And so I have these three, components, body, mind, and spirit, to be able to challenge. And I've, mapped it out and stuff like that. And then I had a halt, because of the flood. It was one of the
Mm-hmm.
reasons why. And so I'll also, because the tornado, because our event center, part of it collapsed. So that's a whole other thing. So it's like,
The enemy's working overtime.
Right, right, exactly. And so, you say to me, like, what is it? And it's like, I'm really curious. What is it, Doug?
My
So,
producer's just laughing. No, I definitely understand that.
you understand. I was going to say, and you understand, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because a couple of months ago, I thought I was going to do a live Building Great Sales Teams course, but now it's turned into a community instead, and so you adapt and pivot where you can. But I was checking out your website, and you've got retreats coming up, but then you also have a summit coming up here in about 7 months or so. And so, can you kind of walk us through what someone should expect on a retreat, and then the summit as well that's coming up?
Sure. So the summits are, the summit I do once a year. The retreats I do 3 times a year. And the
Mhm.
retreats are really, they're deep dives. They're designed for a small group of people. The last one had 5 people in it. I
Mhm.
think the one prior to that, there was 12. The most I've ever done is 20, and I would never ever do that again. Like, that's way too
Too
big.
many.
And
Yeah.
so, and I've done it for 2 when there was only 2 people signed up. So it's not like I go, okay, if there's only one person, no, I'm committed. My God contract is 3 events a year, and whomever gets
Mhm.
sent gets sent. And those are deeper dive into leadership. They're the personal journey of leadership. And the experience is that at the end of that time of you looking at where you are and what you want and why it matters, that
Mhm.
what comes up is surprising and transformational. And it's on those retreats, there are things that get shared that I'd say the majority of the participants have never shared in any other space.
I love it.
They didn't even really get real about their money, their finances, their relationships. So,
Mhm.
and the end result is that then something gets cracked open so that your business grows, so that
Mhm.
you're the leader that looked at the things that needed to transpire in order for you to take that business to the next to its next evolution. And the summit once a year is on those 7 pillars that I just talked about. We spend 3
Okay.
days and we deep dive into the 7 pillars. The Whereas at the retreat, you're looking at where's the weakest link for you, because the
Mhm.
individual journey. The summit is, 101 people on the journey together in the 7 pillars and diving into the material. So that's an experience.
Mhm.
And that is one where, it's you're moving together. But it doesn't have the individual one-on-one coaching, because it's more of a
Much group.
training.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. I like the concept of the retreat because, when you look at just being an entrepreneur in general, maybe you're 2 or 3 years in, whatever the case is. And like we all do when we start, we just kind of shoot from the hip, and we're like, okay, I'm going to focus on sales, or I'm going to focus on marketing, or I'm going to focus on operations. So wait, I gotta make sure my team's taken care of. I'm focused on culture. And then you're jumping all over the place. And then when you finally get to a place where it's like, all right, I need to make a leap, whether it's from 1 million to 5 million, 5 million to 10, whatever the case is, what was easy is not so easy anymore. That growth that used to be easy doesn't come naturally. I feel like this is one of those things that you can go to and really just focus on yourself for 3 days, which if that's all you did, you'd learn a lot, right? But to have a guide in that process and kind of somebody to nudge you a little bit and say, hey, is this something that is holding you back? I think is massive.
well, I thank you for that, because it's something that you understand, because this has been the journey that you're on, and because you understand leadership starts with self.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly it, is when you're in there, you're looking at things that you they're not the external. Whenever there's a problem in business, I would say that most business owners go, okay, what's the external fix? Like,
Right.
I need to pour some money into marketing, advertising, my website, my whatever. Very few people go, what's going on in me that's creating this in the organization? What's creating this in the culture? What's creating this in the pipeline, or in, us attracting great talent? What in me is having this show up? And so when you're there, you're looking at it, but you're not looking at it from a, let's sit down and let's see where I'm the problem. No, that's not what that's we don't do that. It's through, questions and dialogue and conversation. And I will share a very brief story about something at the last retreat. Like, we were in Estes Park, Colorado, and one of the guys came in, and some morning time, and we're just in the just hello, we're not getting into any material. And one of them goes, wow, we just saw some elk this morning, and we saw one go across the pond, and two of the guys had taken a walk, and they saw this elk, and it went across the pond. It got about 90%, and it turned around, and it ran the other way. And so he said, that's kind of like business owners. Sometimes they go 90% and then they turn around when they're so close to getting to the end. But then somebody else shared something, and they said, well, what if 90% was their best? And so it ended up being this conversation where the philosophical conversation had then the reflection of, well, where does that show up in me? Both, in both ways. And so it's really more of the what's going to present, and then have, my responsibility is, when something like that shows up, how do we actually turn that into something that allows each person to see something in themselves and in their business? And I had somebody at the last one who said, gosh, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I just got 10 years worth of transformation. And I had no idea that that was the problem. I had no idea that that started then. And so I think it's the easier route. And I've done it myself, where I've thrown money at things that really weren't the issue, when really the responsibility was me to look in the mirror.
I love that concept too, because it's going to show up not just in your business, but in your personal life, and in your friendships and your relationships, like you said, 100%. And so the ROI is not just your business. The ROI is your entire life, and eventually your legacy, right? And so, the last question I have for you is around legacy. What does legacy mean to you, and what legacy do you want to leave behind?
Legacy. Yep. To make an impact for lifetimes to come, versus, just in the here and now. And, my legacy, when I look at it, I don't have children. Doesn't mean that I don't have a family, but I don't have children. And so it's been a question that I've asked myself, like, what lives on beyond me? And it's the reason why, and it'll make me cry, which is a good thing, because whenever you're moved to tears by your mission and your work, it's a good thing.
Take your time.
I recognize that my responsibility is not about me being out front and center. Mine is not for me to be like, here, look at me. That's not it. When I said to you early on to grow leaders, what I heard the Holy Spirit share with me about this land is that it's my responsibility to heal the land so the land can heal the leaders. And my legacy is lived by the 100,000 other leaders that I've had the honor of coaching and mentoring and training, and them taking a piece of the material and living it in their life. And so when I get the phone call that says, makes me cry this year, I reconciled with my wife. I called my father after not talking for 20 years. I am sober and drug-free for 100 days. My child is no longer cutting herself. When I get those calls and that work, I understand that the work I'm doing will last for generations to come. And the stuff about me helping somebody perhaps grow their business and make more money, and that's nice, especially when they take it and they use it for good. But those pieces around who they are, those are the parts that I understand are the legacy pieces that I understand will make an impact on the planet for future generations.
I love it. The visual that comes to mind, and this is something that's been on my mind a lot lately, right? Because I ask this question to every guest, whether we're all tactical or not. I nail them with this question at the end. and I have this theory, I guess you could say. It's like, if we strive for a man-made or a worldly legacy, we're always going to come up short. We may even be forgotten sooner because of that, because it wasn't pure intention, right? It was about our name and our ego. But I feel like the legacy that you're striving for, and that I want to strive for as well, is one that if there was a visual to it, only God would be able to see it, and it would be ripples in a pond, And again, long after God's already seeing it, those ripples that you're creating, you know what I'm saying? And that to me is why he can say, well done, good and faithful servant, and that would be just amazing. And so
That's what I would want.
100%. Well,
Yeah.
Lisa, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to come on the show and impart your wisdom on us, as well as your leadership philosophies. I think our listeners got a ton of value from this today, beyond business, 100%.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Anytime I get to spend time with you is such a blessing in my life. And so appreciate your leadership and what you do to make the world better.
Thank you so much. Let's get building.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Building Great Sales Teams. We sure do appreciate it. As always, be sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you consume podcasts. Don't forget to join our Facebook group, Building Great Sales Teams, so you can get daily tips on how to get your sales team built, brick by brick. We'll see you there.